technically like per se power or something. And it prolonged power prolonger, yeah.
Yeah, power prolonger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I use that as on Switch Axe myself personally, just because being able to stay in the respective modes longer, either Amp Sword mode or Power Axe mode, was definitely very useful. Not having to worry about having to recharge everything, after a good long while, because. But what's it called? I was actually, when I got into Switch Axe, what really made me truly love the Switch Axe, like, it wasn't even necessarily like the sword mode, which everyone loves because, oh my god, so much damage in Amp Sword mode.
It's so
For
much
me, it was the
damage, it's
axe
a
mode.
lot more mobility, but it's the thing is kind of like when people played Switch Axe and they look at me, they were just like, I can hardly tell if you're literally switching in between sword or axe mode, and then they're asking me why. So I tell them, well, here's the thing: the versatility between Switch Axe, you gotta distinguish the pros and cons. When you're in sword mode, you have the attack mobility. You dish out so much damage. You stab the monster once, and you're just chucking damage, chuck every time. But then, if you find yourself in a situation when a monster's aggroing on you, right, and you don't know whether you're able to just, sheath the weapon and just put in a temporal mantle straight off the ass, no. You don't want to do that. You want to either combo straight into axe mode and then have that mobility back and have more options than to just let a get out of jail free card carry you towards that. I mean, I don't have any problem with people running temporal or rocksteady to just eat hits and then continue their groove on, but sometimes you gotta mix that groove up, which a lot of people don't seem to understand with the weapon. That's why this weapon kind of falls flat, because the learning curve is kind of like it's blinded. Same for sword and shield and Chargeblade. They have like these blinded learning curves that scares people off in a way where people don't understand how to use it. I would put this weapon, even though it's like cheese on edge for Fatalis, but I would just put it on C tier. I love this weapon to death, and it's going to be one of my go-to usable weapons and buys, but yeah, I would put it on C tier for how it's a very versatile weapon. If you get good with sword and axe mode, you are basically good to go to decimate the monster, let alone the overhead chop on it. It may have a lot of motion value and probably won't chalk up a lot of DPS, but if it comes to doing it at the right moment where it can stun the monster and put them to sleep, you can guarantee the monster may fall on their faces, and you can just ZSD as many times as you want. Like, this weapon may be given a shit because of its low skill curve, unquote said, but no, it's a pretty solid weapon. Light bowgun.
Yeah, light bowgun. I
Hold on, let me.
I mean, it's kind of what it is. It's a light bowgun. In comparison to, like, the heavy bowgun. I mean, it has all the, well, not all the ammo types. It has most the same raw ammo types, such as normal, piercing, spread, and whatnot. And obviously, it is more mobile. You can actually move around, fairly easily with it, along with this, the slide attacks, and the ability to evade reload was honestly a really cool thing. The only thing that sucked was you could only, reload a certain amount. But I feel like that was a pretty interesting, balancing mechanic, because, I mean, if you could just reload your entire clip, that would be kind of busted. But most of the time, you could just get reload mods, and you'd be totally fine with just, regular reloads.
Yeah, my issue with this weapon, and I'm just gonna put it at D tier for me. My issue with this weapon, in terms of, like, not even for most people with this weapon, it was deciding what bowgun worked for ammo types. You know,
Yeah.
You had. I used to use bowgun a lot before World, like previous gen, light bowgun for Generations Ultimate, and the only usable light bowgun was technically it was just Nargacugas. It was rapid fire on spread. It was you had the styles that would help you move a lot more better. If you dodge into attacks, you get a special reload that enhanced your shots, let alone your continuing rapid piercing one, and you had cutting. Really, you had cutting damage. So
Hmm. Yeah, honestly, I have to say it's not, even though it's, I mean, it is very similar in that it has, a lot of the same ammo types. It's not. It also can apply status for, pretty easily. But the thing is, I mean,
Savvy Aqua
despite
Shot.
it being slower, the heavy bowgun can do basically everything that the light bowgun can do, but still a little better.
Yeah, the
Uh,
evade reload is
and
like a nice addition and all that, but it's kind of like there was not, besides the alloy light bowgun, which that was the best light bowgun in PlayStation, which not many people in PC or probably Xbox use. It's kind of like we didn't have a good, like the power creep in World kind of put this weapon far behind, and I tried to give this weapon a shot. I really did with
they,
the Alatrion's light bowgun and younger Rugas, but it's just like when you try to make it something and you're trying to like get some time in. I mean, as an ex-speedrunner myself from World, I tried to get some speedrun time in for this weapon. I saw myself feeling a little upset. Like, I had fun with the weapon, but it wasn't dishing out the satisfactory heavy bowgun did.
Mhm.
And I feel like I'm gonna have to put this in B tier because I hardly see many people in World rock this weapon. There's a good number who try to make up for it, but still, it's kind of like
Yeah,
you don't see that many
it's
people rock it unless you're going to a Safi series
and
and you're seeing
honestly,
Aqua Shot, maybe.
mhm,
But that's the only time I see people rock this weapon.
yeah, for it's just specifically for sticky. A lot
Yeah,
of the times, sometimes I see people run it for the element. It's very rare, but I do see that happen. And like even with the regular ammo types, I hardly see anyone use it for that. So it's mostly like when people are kind of just grinding through, and they're just starting out, and they might have one, and it's just like, oh, okay, this person's not using sticky, but it's probably because they're just leveling through and they haven't gotten to that point yet.
yeah.
And
So
so it really kind of ruined my whole viewpoint. Not, I mean, I like to think that the mines that they had, it was kind of meh. And then Iceborne came out with the counter mine attack, and I thought that was really really cool. I just wish that it went farther.
I wish it would have been farther. Like I used the mine attack a lot, let
Like,
alone against Rajang, a tempered Rajang in my hunt with a buddy of mine.
yeah,
We went far, but it was kind of like, again, I was using a Latrion's bowgun and I wasn't really getting anywhere. It was an embarrassment,
honestly, it
actually,
was.
because I wasn't really doing that much hits, and my like switching between ammo types, and they were all just so bad to shoot at. I was just like, I can do this.
Yeah, honestly, like whenever and I realized that um not only is the counter, like when it pushes you back, it's not even iframe. It just it's just a mobility tool, and a lot of times it's not even enough to save you. Like you have to know where the monster is going, and then kind of try to align yourself so that you're moving out of the way, but the mine will still hit, which doesn't always happen. It's actually really hard to do against quite a few monsters, so
Yeah,
it's just so underwhelming now,
in
especially
terms
since
of
most people only use it for like sticky, or maybe for the element, for like when you need element, because it is for pretty good at applying element with like the Elatron one. That's the only other time I ever see them use it besides sticky.
honestly, like yeah, yeah, I couldn't give this weapon the benefit of its use. If
Mm.
anything, if I were just to like do something special for this weapon, like And I'm just gonna throw spoilers out there for Rise. This weapon does have a lot of mobility options, but this thing still falls behind in Rise. To be honest, like until I see some new uses, because again we're using fixed weapon sets, so we don't know what we have. But like once the release of the game comes out, I will see if there's any good use for light bowgun because I would like to use it again.
Mm-hmm. I do too. Like one of the other things that I actually thought was really interesting about it was the rapid fire options. That's honestly what truly drew me into this weapon at the first place was the mobility and the ability to rapid fire. And I was like, okay, so let's see what can we rapid fire here. And you could only, for the most part, a lot of the stuff you could only rapid fire stuff like normal, and normal 2 specifically. And I was so disappointed at the time. It's like there really isn't much you can really rapid fire at this point. It wasn't until later games that you could get stuff like rapid fire element and stuff, and even rapid fire normal 3 extremely uncomfortable to use.
And with heavy bowgun, you can charge your shots now on Rise, so you can have a charge.
Mm-hmm.
So, reality, it's kind of like this weapon doesn't have that. It's like, yeah, it has its rapid fires now, but it's kind of like, again, what can you do?
We can see what it's going for, but it kind of misses its mark.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah. Now, next weapon on the list is Lance.
Lance. Okay. Lance.
I gotta put this weapon
I could understand why.
I gotta put this weapon in B.
In B?
Yeah. Let me tell you why. So, previous games to base Iceborne, no, I hardly saw many people use Lance in base Iceborne, base world until Iceborne, when it got its clutch counter.
The clutch counter is really cool. I'm not gonna lie, that stuff is addicting.
It made tenderization less of a chore and more of a instinctive habit.
Like compared to that was one of the very few ways that they implemented clutch claw into weapons. That was this was the right way to do it. If a lot of other weapons is like, no, this isn't how you're supposed to do clutch claw, and then they introduced the clutch claw the clutch claw counter onto Lance, and it's just like, okay, that is cool. That is how you should have been able to use the clutch claw from the beginning. Yeah,
it's legitimately like the only issue with Lance that really hurts compared to previous gen games is the power.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't provide that heavy hitting status that most weapons have, leaving this weapon a little bit off short behind Hammer. And the reason I say so is kind of like ever since Bracky's Lance came out, I started to use that a little bit because I'm on the side of Raw World, enforcing the whole use element thing as an advantage. It's like it worked, but for most weapons it didn't, and they didn't scale that well with Lance to the point where if you want to be creative, you can go for, per se, Frostcraft with Lance for the clutch claw counter to get that big damage and to start poking away. Poking away was nice, but then at the exact same time, that was literally the only kit that there was. And then you had the Running Man with Lance, which that was another way to dish out cutting damage while the monster was down, or just do it all together to get your little mountain, your little mountain damage to jump, the little wall, run across the wall, like the walls that could be runnable. You had all that.
Yeah.
But like a lot of stuff in World kind of still kills this weapon behind, and that is with the meta. People say fun Lance, and there's going to be a good medium of people that will enjoy Lance, but not many are going to stick around to play the weapon as much as they say they would. Like, I look at their guild cards, and they say that they use Lance, but then they use it less than what they claim to say it because they're just now trying it out.
And honestly, like, as far as how dynamic the weapon is, it's one of the least dynamic, like, in terms of actual gameplay. Its entire moveset is comprised of pokes in general.
Yeah,
like the wide sweep is the only other moveset. Is the only, you know, exception to that, and even then there isn't really much of a reason you really want to use wide sweep.
Yeah, like, if you're using wide sweep, it's just you giving the weapon its dedication and respect. But other than that, it's kind of like, people criticize me for using wide sweep and then running and jumping so much is because I don't want to just sit there and be bored and poking at a monster. I want to play the way I want and, you know, do what works. And even though I did those only two things, and then, you know, sit down and shield, or like sit down and heavy guard, so it, you know, when you guard and then you guard again, so you just stay there stationary on the ground, and you're eating Lunas like Nova, and you're just sitting there. That's fun. The defensive part is fun and all, but I want to be aggressive with Lance. Like in Rise, there is a counter meter for Lance, where if you do the Silk Bind perfectly, depending if you whiff it and you still get hit for it, there's 3 levels of damage buffs. There's a yellow, orange, and red. Yellow is when you whiff it and you still and you counter, you can still. It's basically that one counter, if I remember correctly, where if you get hit, you can counter back. It's kind of like that, but it's kind of like it buffs the Lance, and then you can do sweeps. Like the sweep is actually useful for the switch skill. It's kind of like Lance has its beauty and Rise compared to the world, where the weapon is actually more feasible, per se. And with the Stinger, with the Lunge Stinger and all that extra stuff that they have for this weapon, I can see a lot of people using this weapon that the clutch counter is not going to be missed. And that's a sad part.
Yeah. But, oh man, that is very sad.
But I mean the new parts of Rise, it's kind of like it's a treat. It's a big treat, and you can now play how the weapon can be played the way you want. You're more versatile, you're more mobile, you can do everything now.
I do like, though, how tanky you can be. Like, with the exception of heavy bowgun, you know, with 3 shield mods, this is like one of the most survivable weapons you can use, because you have this really big shield.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you can, you know, get guard 5, or heck, if you like to be some of the more dedicated players, you go with evade lancing.
And yeah,
you get maxed out evade window and just hop everywhere.
Yeah. And that's why, like, for the base demo of Rise, you have like 2 silk binds. One is the counter that I explained, and then the other one where you just put a knife on the monster, it has the silk, and you could just jump towards the monster with super armor added to just get by without sheathing your weapon. You have all that. So it's kind of like...
But I personally put it in the D tier just because it's just so underwhelming. I mean, it's no doubt great for you know, defensive playstyles, like for those who, you know, want to just be this stalwart, immovable wall. you know, I have this big, huge shield and nothing could get past me. But there's also, I do remember that in certain fights that's actually a disadvantage. I'm looking at you, Fatalis.
Oh yeah, it is.
Oh my god. The fact that Fatalis could actually spam you to death with those fireballs is actually stupid.
It was feasible. I managed to beat him with Lance, but it was just one of the most... After that 1-2 cart, I was just like, do I actually want to get serious with this monster? And I actually did, and it was actually one of the most annoying things ever. I did not want to have to put effort on Fatalis after figuring out that I could cheese him in 5 different ways.
Yeah, it was quite sad. I feel like that this weapon is, you know, also another one where it seemed like, you know, you could actually, you know, it could be really fun. I feel like they probably did fix that in Rise, but in World, it's so underwhelming for now.
No more bloated weapons.
And that's why I put it in
bloated
D.
damage values anymore. It's just everything is equal.
The first part where we actually differed in opinion for once a little.
Alright, so.
But okay, Insect Wave.
I'm gonna put this at C. And let me tell you why.
Alright.
So for it being a elemental heavy multi-hitting weapon that only focuses on aerial because its DPS was bad in ground, all that extra shit, I do feel like a lot of people are missing out on trying to use the weapon properly for normal reasons that people don't always have to get mounts with this weapon. People don't always have to be stuck in the air for this weapon. People don't always have to stack on dash juice for this weapon. When I use this weapon, I started using it the way it was to be played with the elemental builds that Inalga gave me, and I was clapping cheeks. But then I didn't want to be in the air. I wanted to be in the ground. So as I sent my Kinsect out to do the work for me with the blast damage, I basically mainly used my vaults for evasive purposes and then coming back with an aerial assault or the plunging dive as a way to reposition into the monster's head. A lot of people ask me, how is that even possible? And it's kind of like, you wanna look at the environment you're in. World has a pretty closed-in environment, but it has vines everywhere. So when I saw like a wall of vines and I see like some type of aggro on me, I take part in looking around where my environment is, and I suddenly just vault into that, and I have like the bug stick just sticking into the wall, and I'm just clinging there without any stamina loss.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like an easier way to get into the wall without having to sheath and just get in. Calling in the Kinsect has never been an issue for me, but it's kind of like for it to just bring people the mentality that all they can do is stay safe in the air quote. I wish that mentality was gone if only 90% of the damage values for Insect Glaive in World was just upon, giving the mount damage plus free damage plus free mount to the monster falling apart, all that extra stuff. For brute wyverns, this weapon cannot compensate for keeping your stamina up if you're constantly wasting your time in the air. For any brain dead who tries to use this weapon, but
honestly, I don't even know why you'd want to use on a brute wyvern when you could, you still hit the monsters, effective the parts like their head and their tail, which they usually keep pretty high. You can still do the same from the ground. They have an attack that reaches really high.
Yeah, but the thing is, when I say that against brute wyverns, it's kind of like, how Devil Joe does that little lunge jump, that no matter what you do, you can eat away at your stamina. That's the part where people keep failing the mounts, and then they complain. That's where I was hearing. Whereas for me, World's mounting is still the same as the old gen mounting. It's just you can now move. Instead, you can just hold on. If they do that, you can waste less stamina towards that. But
whenever they try to knock you off and all that.
Yeah, but yeah,
I have to say,
weapon.
Let's see. The Kinsect is interesting because for one, it has all its different types of Kinsects that you have at your disposal, which there's different speeds, different levels of power. You can even heal with it. Although, quite frankly, the heal is kind of, as far as I'm concerned, it's practically useless. I don't see many people using it specifically for heals or anything like that. If you get healed, if you get hurt, you just pop a bag of potions. So.
And the thing that I wish Capcom would add was the one where if you charge up, which stick charging or Insect Glaive charging does not exist in World. Like you can just
Mhm.
it's just send your your insect out, and that's it. You don't have where if I'm watching this clip on my end where you see a little orange orb go into a yellow orb, and you see me launch the insect, and the insect's just attacking. Like that.
Yeah.
That gave the insect glaive a flavor. Then there was the plunging vault, which was also. I mean, it's the downward thrust, but it's this one is kind of like a plunging vault. Which, if I do have that with me, I could just show that off when I was. Yeah, this
Mhm.
clip right here. You can literally see
Okay.
it, and it's kind of like we're me and a friend were fighting against this elder dragon. It's called Bug Blow. So as soon as I get that charged up, I see one of the monsters about to stick out their thing, launch myself in the air, bam. Like
Okay.
you don't get that anymore for Insect Glaive because I know deep down in secret Capcom does not like the Insect Glaive. They don't because of 4 Ultimate. It was busted as shit. It's still busted in GU with one of the styles that you could just vault into the monster or player and just like deal crazy damage or deal crazy motion value. But it's kind of like
Okay.
you for World, it's kind of like it has a singular role now to a player base. It's just get up in the air, deal whatever I can, grounded bad, the floor is lava.
Yeah, it's kind of sad how what's it called how in world everyone's all about get in the air, and the ground is bad, and in general because of that you do really bad damage in comparison.
Yeah, and I
And
remember
so
when there was the Fatalis mod, the white Fatalis mod out, someone was using
yeah.
Insect Glaive, and that person was barely in the air. He was 50 in the air, 50 on the ground, doing damage upon damage, using the downward thrust to reposition himself into Fatalis's head every single time.
Yeah,
And
I was
that was sick
shocked at
to
how often you
watch.
could hit the head.
Yeah, like
Like so
he
many
locked
tricks
into
you can use
that.
to smack his head. It was actually really awesome.
Yeah, he was
And
legitimately targeting that head, and he did not let off.
honestly, though, one of the things that really does throw me about this weapon is the fact that you have to collect buffs in order to, change your entire move set, and it can actually be kind of hard to get the one you want because
I
certain
feel
body
like there's
parts.
a I feel like there's a learning curve. Sorry to cut you off, but I feel like there's a learning curve to that as well. Because if I'm not mistaken, one of the white buffs, you would think it's Mind's Eye, but also that's actually earplugs. The only
Mhm.
buff that changes your moveset a little bit is the red buff, actually. And
Yeah, but
the
you'd probably want to get all 3 buffs so that you can get that combination buff that
yeah,
that
to make
increases
it
everything overall.
yeah, which makes it last longer. You get the earplugs, you get the armor skin, you get the demon drug, you get those. Actually, I feel like that in it itself, if Insect Glaive didn't have shit damage in World, it would have been like not much of a chore, but more of a okay, let's get this shit started type of thing.
hmm I do like the move set of the glaive, specifically though when you have your buffs, like not outside of the buff. Outside of the buff, it's pretty meh.
Yeah,
Like so, I mean, it is very cool to play. Like when I play it, I love just flipping around everywhere and just you know doing all these crazy flips here and there. So
right. So
versus
hunting one.
so
Can we
oh
get
yeah, I
on
forgot
that?
to actually place it. But yeah,
Yeah, I put it
uh,
on C
yeah,
tier.
that is a pretty good place to put it, honestly. I'm not gonna lie, yeah. So
So
yeah, hunting horn. This is another. I mean, it is one of the least used weapons out there, so I can't say it's technically all
if
that slept
this
on, but it's
if this
still.
was for Rise, this would already go into S. Not gonna
Oh
lie,
yeah,
but
yeah, I know. Like it got so many changes that I'd love to see.
Like,
honestly.
I could legitimately just go into my phone, post something on Twitter or YouTube about my hunting horn gameplay, and just leave that dude talking. But
Hmm.
somewhere along the line, this weapon did also fall as a. I'm just gonna put it on D, even though for me, I don't want to put it on D, but I have to because I use this weapon. I use this weapon when I started over for when I was doing a challenge that somebody said you just can't beat base world with hunting horn alone. I proved them wrong. You can't,
Well,
and it's not like the hardest thing, but it's one of the most challenging things, really. And you know, you just can't count on a weapon to just like again corner healing. A friend when
yeah,
he
God,
first
that
played Rise, and he said, "Oh, I'm just gonna go hunting horn." I'm just like, "All right, you know how to use a weapon?" He's like, "No, I'm just gonna corner heal." I looked at him. I didn't want to criticize him too hard, but I told him, "Please don't do that. The weapon is very different this game. Like, it really is very different. Like, World and Generations Ultimate changed the whole perspective of hunting horn when hunting horn and for ultimate people used it for they used it for hard tough quests. A lot of people used it because it was that busted, but honestly, uh,
I
I
I don't
I
know.
don't know
I
what
feel
to
like
say.
this weapon, despite it being low damage and seeing as just a support weapon, I feel like this weapon kind of let's see, it kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It encapsulates a lot of the goal of Monster Hunter, which is being able to work together with the party, to defeat monsters. Because that's what in general Monster Hunter I think was what they were wanting it to be. A game that you could play with your friends to go out and hunt monsters together. And Hunting Horn, you know, be with all the different types of buffs. And I love how many buffs are that you can get with Hunting Horn. And the
Like
different
it
types of
even
Hunting Horn
buffs
you can use.
yourself, and a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're buffing their team, but do you realize that you're buffing yourself as well for you to be in the fight? You shouldn't
Yeah, and
corner.
so I mean, it does, like I said, it kind of encapsulates like the whole goal of what you want, to do in Monster Hunter. It's to help each other to defeat this monster. And Hunting Horn um, kind of fits that specific criteria that they'd want. And so I
And
truly do think that this is, an actually like it's a good weapon. It's just not a lot of people like it because especially in world, it's figuring out how it works and how to use it effectively can be a bit of a curve. Like I know it actually took me a little while before I actually started really getting good with the horn, and
And it's
there was
funny because I
some.
even have a clip of me using hunting horn against Anjanath, and I beat Anjanath in the span of 8 minutes at best because I was just testing something out with the paralysis, Safi paralysis hunting horn, and
Mhm.
I was just having fun. Like I have a clip of me just kicking the horn straight into Anjanath's chin, and he just falls back. Like, dude, that is
Get that
sick.
sweet shin music.
Like, dude, this weapon I love it so much. In GU, it was fun to use. In 4 Ultimate, it was fun to
Yeah.
use. In World, it's still fun to use. But at the same time, a lot of people give it shit because it's not dealing what they desire. And for it to be, like, I feel a little bit upset that in World, in Rise, it got all this, and I hope to God that a good number of the music notes are still there as in like the different types because they've when I was
Hmm.
playing in World, I mean I was playing in Rise and then I saw IGN's version of the hunting horn of a different hunting horn in Rise. There has been the same notes in both of those hunting horns. I thought they were beta hunting horns, but at the same time, I feel like it's going to be the same notes for all of them. And it's kind of like, no, why would you do that? I pray to God
Yeah.
when the game releases and I get different types of hunting horns, they're different note, because
I see.
if there isn't and it's just the same note, I might have to drop this weapon because it's kind of like, yeah, it's really fun to use. It's ridiculous. It was nutty in the demo, but
Hmm.
being able to just do 4 notes and not being able to invest in those, it just, I just can't. I can't.
I see. Well, let's see. It's always so nice to see a player who does use hunting horn though, just because they are like kind of the unicorns of this game. Kind of along with some of the hardcore Lance players. Seeing an actual hunting horn main is really rare.
Yeah,
I've
and
only
it's
come
kind of like
across
they say
three
they're
people
hunting
in my
horn mains.
entire yeah. I've only come across 3 people in my entire time playing this who have ever actually been hunting horn mains. Like they actually just used hunting horn for the most part. But and and I have to say, truly, honestly, like I've seen a lot of people use weapons to their full potential and whatnot, and they look really cool when doing it. But I have to say, like there's my first impression when I first saw a legitimately, truly amazing hunting horn player. This was back when I was doing that quest with tempered Kirin and tempered Namiel to upgrade the temporal mantle. And I was like, okay, let me pop an SOS for this. I might need a little help. And I got a hunting horn player. It was just, I only ever got the one person. And so, but we duoed it. And oh my god, I was so thoroughly impressed with this player, with their ability to, avoid taking damage while smacking the head and giving me all of the buffs that I need. I was in absolute awe, and it was one of the coolest things ever. I truly felt like I was in sync with this person, and they were using a hunting horn of all weapons. And so, I don't know, like I said, my first impression when I first saw the weapon, and I knew it was a choice to use, I was like, that seems like a really odd weapon, a hunting horn. But now, after thinking back to some of the truly good players that do use it, the more dedicated people, I'm just like, wow.
Yeah,
Used
and
right, this thing is an absolute beast.
used
And that's
right.
why,
And when I went and played through all of Base World to Iceborne with hunting horn, I felt a sense of accomplishment, and I was just like, bruh, this weapon. Why are people sleeping on it? This weapon is amazing.
yeah, it truly is amazing. It's actually so many people are just so hesitant because it looks so awkward. Or some people might think, oh, it's a blunt weapon, right? Then why not just use hammer? And I'm just like,
I get that all the
oh,
time. I get that all the time.
because it's like because of all the other things you can do with it, and I don't know. I feel like it doesn't deserve to be in D tier. To be honest, for me, this is actually a B tier weapon. Personally, I truly think that this weapon, like in general, even though it has the smallest dedicated player base, of those people who do play it, like this is actually an extremely good weapon to use.
Yeah,
And even in Rise just kind of took that and ran with that, and now it's like one of the most popular weapons out there.
it's literally
with all the
it is
changes.
literally now the Tonfas. It's literally now the Tonfas from FZ. It fights just like the Tonfas from FZ, and it's like it's really crazy to have a
It looks
fast-hitting
satisfying.
weapon. Like I never knocked over a monster continuously with just stuns and part breaks. I felt like I was hitting a world record. I didn't even need to prep. I only prepped was because I wanted to enjoy the scenery of the entire map. and just collect what I could. But then afterwards, I was just like, yeah, no, I can't do this. This weapon is just, I'm getting lost in the sauce, and it just feels too good.
Yeah, so like I said, I like despite that small fan base, this weapon by itself is actually a very solid choice as far as versatility, usability. Even though its damage is not quite up there, like I feel like the utility that you are able to give, not even to just yourself but your fellow hunters, is really useful, because this, like I mentioned before, this weapon was truly made to be used in multiplayer settings, which is what they encourage you to do, to go out there, connect with other people with other weapon types, or hell, even other hunting horn players, get together and smash the monster's face in.
Dude, 4-player hunting horn is just a menace.
I think I've yet to actually get 4 people to use hunting horn. Like, I've never been in a full for hunting. I've been in with like 3, but never 4. And it's actually, it breaks my heart because I actually legitimately want to have a full party of hunting horn, players for once to beat on a monster. It really is actually like low key pretty fun.
Yeah. So
yeah, like that's just personally thing. You don't have to place it. You don't want to, but I do think that weapon specifically is more of a B tier weapon. It is definitely, the stigmas around it that kind of hold it back a little bit, and it is. I don't want to say clunky to use or anything, but this is a bit of a curve, because there are some animations and stuff that can make it difficult to use more effectively versus other weapons. But I think it's still a very solid choice if you really were to just pick up that weapon and try to run with it.
Yeah, I have my good run with it, and no matter what anybody says, I'm still going to enjoy this weapon the way Capcom gave the weapon. Anybody who corner heals, I'm not going to give them slack at it. They can do that if they want. As long as they contribute to the hunt, I'm fine with that. Just, I'm having fun with the hunts at the end of the day. Next weapon. Hammer. Sonic
one of the most simplest weapons out there. I mean, it's a hammer. What do you do with the hammer? You hit things really hard with it. It's so simple, yet so effective.
So back in the old game, there was like some styles for hammer that really just made this weapon like very fun to just go beat all around, because at the end of the day, you're still bonking the monster regardless. So it's kind of like, yeah. In World, like, one thing stuck out to me, which was like the sliding down the hill and just spinning straight to the monster. It was when World first came out and I saw a friend first play it, that's all he did with hammer, because he couldn't get damage in against Zoro Magdros's like things. And that's all he had for big damage. I haven't seen him use the weapon how I would expect to use it. He would just switch out of that because it's kind of like he didn't know what else he needed. But when I picked it up in the old games, having a Tetsukabra lunge themselves to you in midair and dive bomb you, and all you can do is do that upward swing and knock him back up in the air, only for him to come back down. That was hilarious. In terms of utility, I have seen a couple of people use hammer as much and well endowed as I would expect it. I'm going to put the weapon somewhere around B or C, because my use with the weapon is kind of like, same with Sword and Shield, you just like, you get your little buff when you shug it out, hit the head, face, and then if you just like do the extra full charge, like, for your third charge, you can go claw into the monster's face and start spinning around. This weapon...
That's very fun to do, by the way.
This weapon, elemental-wise, is not like, the best, unless you're
It's
doing that,
garbage.
unless
Let's
you're
just say
doing
it
that,
right now.
yeah,
It's garbage.
unless you're doing that spin thing, but at the exact same time, it's kind of like nah. But I remember getting criticized for hitting only where hitting nowhere near the head, and the reason being because I was a dual blade player. I was being aware of you know my surroundings, having respecting where people's targets go, so I can have an opening myself. But it's kind of like in a multiplayer sense, it's really hard to use this weapon when your objective and the other person's objective meet the same thing, and you're gonna accidentally knock them up.
Hmm. Yeah, that's one thing about it. Like the one skill that allows them to kind of gap close just a little bit. Well, might knocks people up into the air, and I'm actually not quite a fan of that. I wish it wouldn't launch teammates whenever they did that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like it's a
Because
good
like
thing
I
to
want to hit
save
the
their
head, but I don't
lives
want
with.
to.
It's a good thing to save their lives with it, but then also it's kind of like it's a lot in the way. Really, it's
Mhm.
a lot in the way.
But hey, it's one of the easiest weapons to pick up and just to go with it. I mean, yeah, I'd probably personally put this right up there with hunting horn there in B tier in my list, just because.
Yeah, I
I
said
mean, like I said,
biggest.
it's very solid choice. It's very simple to use, and it does good damage. It can be a little hard sometimes to hit the head, um, in order to get the good damage and the KO and all that. But and the ability to use the sliding thing, it's pretty fun being able to land all those hits. And but let's see, the the launching mechanic is kind of, like I said, is a little annoying
Yeah,
sometimes, just because like I said, you want to hit the head as much as possible, but you don't want to do that at a detriment to your teammates. And I've done that accidentally a few times before. So like, okay, I'm gonna get right up close to the head. Oh wait, I have my teammate. Shoot, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just want to hit the head. And I've had that happen to me before as well from other Hammer players. Is like, and I've done this with friends and just then they is like, and they'd knock me up out of the way. It it could just in jest, and I don't have any issue with that. It is fun sometimes being launched in the air like that, but
yeah, I've grown
yeah, it's
tolerant to literally get launched in the air and just use that as an advantage because at that point, Monster Hunter is also about adapting. So if you have that reckless player who will just launch you or any other person, you gotta improvise 90% of the time to help out, compensate for small little mistakes because you are bound to get punished for small mistakes in this game. And
mhm.
being launched up is actually one of those. It's like you have to, if you know it's going to happen because you're aware that you're playing with those type of people, you need to expect it. You can't expect 90% of your teammates to carry you with the dust of life or anything else. You also have to be
Yeah,
prepared yourself to fight along with all that. And I feel like
yeah.
that's why people get annoyed by hammer and switch axe when it comes to just lunging people in the air is for that small reason.
Hmm. I do think that the claw thing that they implemented for Hammer was pretty good.
Yeah,
It's on a similar tier to what they did with Lance. Is like, this is how you properly implement this stuff.
yeah,
So, um, yeah, I very solid overall. Wish it did better with like Element and stuff. I know it is one of the worst. But
now next weapon,
but
and this is
as far as I know,
one
it's always been a raw straight up in all of the other games.
always has been. Now
Yeah, so
next weapon, and this is one that I dread.
really, what
there,
is it you dread?
so Gunlance, I'm gonna have to put it with Lance and Light Bowgun only because
Oh,
I really haven't given it that much love this game. People, yeah, have compensated for the lack of mobility with evade extender and all that, and the shelling. They put artillery in it, but it's kind of like, oh god, where do I start? Wormsteak carries this weapon 90% of the time.
yeah. The extra explosions and damage that you get from it
And
is definitely very useful.
if I remember correctly, someone in a different chat did say that shelling is its own damage when it comes to having artillery in it. I do believe that
Yeah.
because after testing it out in Rise, I worried I did like the weapon for the new stuff it got, but I did not like the weapon for the for that and its lack of mobility, which I hope that they'll fix. But
I think they did fix that in Rise because one of their attacks that you can change, instead of having charge shelling,
yeah, it's
like you
blast
can straight up
dash.
have a gap closer kind of
Yeah,
attack.
it's the blast dash. But
Mm-hmm.
oh, but
And so,
it's kind of like in World's case, it's a weapon that if you're using it and the monsters everywhere, you're just gonna be sheathing
you're gonna have a
and
tough time.
sheathing and unsheathing, and yeah.
One thing I
Again,
don't like is the shelling and the way it affects your sharpness. Shelling will, I mean, it's not reliant on sharpness of your weapon, at least until it gets to red, at which it basically just stops working. But
it's been like that for most games. I don't know if I don't use Gunlance in GU, but Gunlance back then did slap a couple teeths in for monsters when it comes to hunting styles, and that's where the weapon did shine. But
it is good at part breaks, just because it's just straight raw, not raw, but it's just straight fixed damage to whatever parts you're attacking. So
now my main issue is the shelling. It took until Raging Bracky for them to give this weapon a tolerable amount of love.
Mm-hmm.
I was not cool with that. And the reason I wasn't because it should have been given from the beginning. This weapon fell way too hard on the tier list that people who actually gave this weapon a chance in the world gave up immediately. Disappointed. And, there has been some people who refuse to play anything other than Gunlance because they really were dedicated to that weapon.
Yeah.
And, for the devs the world team devs that were just fixing up on this weapon, I really wish they should have given this weapon so much more love. Let alone
I do too.
The damage values for this weapon sucks wholehearted ass. I am not gonna lie to you. I tried my best to compensate for this weapon. I gave the weapon 3 weeks of use, a month, and I just couldn't wrap my head around
how people could enjoy it.
No, how it had potential and it's gone. Because again, Wormsteak sometimes does carry this weapon, but
no, it's honestly, Wormsteak is straight up 30% of your damage, and I will tell you that right now. Someone who before this conversation even happened, I've been using Gunlance. That's the weapon I was using.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you're not able to stick that Wormsteak somewhere on the monster's body, preferably in a weak spot, you're straight up losing 30% of your damage.
Not only your damage, your time, and literally the amount of times you can get the monster down.
Yeah, it is truly dependent on how often you can down the monster, or just how well you know where a monster is going to be positioned at a certain point, because it does take a while to place that Wormsteak, which is really annoying. You have to hit, you have to hit 2 shells and then it comes out, and it's just like
Yeah, a
By
lot
that
of people
time,
are trying to
monsters
find
were already
out.
long gone.
Yeah, a lot of people are trying to find out where they can just instantly do it because they did not want to find themselves just doing shellings and then because they wanted to combo into shellings. I know Magazine Up was one of them that helped most Gunlance weapons shine a little bit bright, but why does Fatalis Gunlance have to be one of the best Gunlance out there when Raging Bracky came out?
Well, Fatalis is the best normal shelling, whereas Raging Bracky
Yeah,
is the best wide shelling.
and
The best long shelling is actually any Safi weapon, as long as you just slap long shelling 2 onto it.
yeah,
But yeah, it's. Have you tried all 3 shelling types?
yeah,
I think I've only actually tried like the normal and wide style. Like wide is definitely, in my opinion, the most fun. It's the most versatile,
yeah.
and wide and
That
normal is
that's and that's what
it
upset
does
me
good,
because
really good burst damage
yeah,
for sure. But
it's
it's
just
hard to connect.
yeah, it's kind of like for long I only used it to get gold and silver wrath off gear a good percentage of the
Mhm.
time, and for wide it was just yeah, it was just basically the only thing I could use actually. But
Mhm.
I didn't want to. I was just more upset to switch between the two because one of them had the good amount of shellings that the other one didn't, and
Mhm.
I'm okay with those two gun lances. It's just the other gun lances are
Yeah.
purely bad.
Yeah.
And
Whenever
this
you
is
see.
just my opinion towards it because I tried to give those others a chance. I think Luna, that wasn't Luna's, it was someone Gunlands. I can't remember because I haven't played World in such a long time. But one of the Gunlands is from the, was it short, right? Wide? No, it wasn't. What was the third one from side?
Long, wide, and normal.
Yeah, normal. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I'm fucking bugging. It was in one of the arena quests. I was using that. I was getting somewhere, but I found myself missing wide and long at some point because I was so
Yeah.
cut used to those, and I wasn't really doing as much as I thought I would with that one. So
If anything, though, at the very least, it's one of the because of there's different shelling styles, and especially for something like a long shelling, you actually don't need a lot of decos in order to make it work. Because
yeah,
if you're just going to go with straight shelling, you only need like very specific skills, in particular artillery, and all you do is max that out and trying to get as much attack as possible to max out the potential damage that you can do with it to cap out the actual attack on top of it, and that's it. You can basically slot in anything else you want. So it's one of the least uh, deco heavy weapons. Should I say, or it's the least reliant on decos for good damage, I guess.
yeah,
Versus some other weapons that on top of all the the regular damage stuff, you need like additional things uh like heavy bow guns. Like if you're using a raw type, you'd want to get uh you know like uh the spread jewel or the pierce jewel or normal shots, or if you have what's it called? If you have a great sword, you'd want focus, or if you have a bow, you'd want a stamina surge and all that stuff. And so it's just like if you have gun lance and you're using like at least the long shelling style, which is purely shelling, like all you need is artillery, and you
yeah,
can basically spec for anything else that you want, and you'll be totally fine.
yeah. So in my opinion, I might have to just put this weapon with lance and light bowgun.
Yeah, honestly,
I
I'd probably agree with you there, just because I know Wormstake specifically, because it is such a good chunk of your damage, and landing it can be so difficult and frustrating at times. And it's just like I remember trying to do Fatalis with this when I was like, okay, let me try to hunt Fatalis with every single weapon and see how that goes. I had the hardest time trying to smack that thing on this dude's head.
Yeah.
Just, and especially because when the slinger that you get, like you have either rocks or dragon pods, and it gives you the rocks only give you like 2 minutes on your worm stake, and the dragon pods only give you 3 minutes. And it's just like, well, that's only a tenth of the length of the max duration of this fight. So you were telling me, like, if I had to, use all the time, I had to try to beat this monster, I'd have to apply this thing, like, 10 times, potentially.
And especially with
even more, up to
heavy powerhouse like Fatalis.
15?
Yeah.
I would not be... I was not happy with trying to hit him with that. And I felt the damage difference when trying to break the head and all that. Because like I mentioned before, the shells definitely do help with the part breaking and all that. It's just
yeah, it's a chore, and to just literally try and do that multiple times against the powerhouse like Fatalis, it's just
and also and the other thing about this is the fight against Elatron. This is also one of the worst weapons to fight Elatron with, just because it completely takes out shelling as a whole, which is part of the identity of the weapon.
Yeah,
and I was just like,
DPS
I love Elatron.
It did not go so well for Elat.
Yeah, I love Elatron in general. As the fight and everything, it's one of my favorite it's probably my favorite Elder Dragon fight ever. But the fact that Gunlance would have a hard time, specifically because it would need an element, and it completely takes away shelling. Yeah, we're kind of ranking the weapon tier list for Iceborne. But anyways, so I was told that in order to do this effectively, or at least to fight him effectively with a gun lance, you would have to go with a slap lance, which is literally just physical attacks. And well, there's nothing wrong with wanting to just pure physical attacks. Like I mentioned before, shelling is part of its identity. Without it, it's basically kind of like a lesser version of the lance. It doesn't have the counters that it has. It just has the same pokes.
Yeah. So it's kind of it's kind of like with Rise giving the lance its own identity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, it's kind of like, I'm glad that's getting the refresh. But again, the thing that bothers me is that it does not get any basic buffs from what I heard. And testing this out also scared me entirely because of the simple fact that it really doesn't. And I'm hoping that they do take into account and change that. But if they don't, I'll still use a weapon. It's just,
Yeah, it's... When you can land that Wormstake Blast, it's honestly, really super fun seeing all the explosions and stuff. And especially, because of, what's it called? The Light Break has Blast Element on top of it, is even more explosions. So you've got explosions on top of explosions.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just so satisfying to use.
Yeah.
And I love it for that.
Yeah, Blast
So if I want to see
coming
explosions everywhere, I go with the gun lance for sure. Explosions.
And
it's so fun.
Dashing into Rise, it's kind of like, changing your Wyvern Fire into just a way to just approach the monster. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, if I play, when I play Gunlance, I would definitely be using that a lot, because the amount of times that a monster's jumped far away, I'm like, oh shit, let me go sheath my weapon and run after it. Honestly is too much. It's way too frustrating. So I'd want to be able to just hop back onto the monster if using my shelling ability to carry me forward with its momentum. It's pretty awesome, honestly. So yeah, I mean, despite how how much potential it has and how fun it could be, like this weapon does kind of go down here more with the lance and the bowgun.
Yeah.
All right, so great sword.
The weapon that makes the game so great.
It's kind of the defining weapon of the game, and honestly, I just looking at it and thinking of it in general, and just thinking of every time I've seen a great sword or anything like it, like this weapon is up there with longsword in my opinion, is an S tier, just because it's even if not just for the damage and the playstyle, but the symbolism behind it. The great sword is practically Monster Hunter. You know what I mean? I know there's a lot of other like animes and stuff that have characters wielding really large swords and all that stuff, but Monster Hunter, the way that you handle this weapon in Monster Hunter is very unique in that you realize that this is a big weapon, but it's also treated like such, not like something that you basically just carry, and swish around one-handed like you're some super strong person. Like there is some actual weight to this weapon. It's treated, like it's supposed to be. This is a very heavy weapon, but with it being a heavy weapon, it hits really hard. It has the highest single hit for for melee type weapon, and it's very satisfying landing a lot of your hits, whatnot, especially with stuff like True Charge Slash, which was introduced to World. And I remember watching it, the older versions of Greatsword, and I'm like, obviously not seeing True Charge was a little bit different, but then I realized, you go up to this monster and you go up and you charge up your attack and you swing it, and it always looked like you're really hurting the monster when you swing this thing and you land a hit.
Funny enough, I'm gonna put this weapon on B, but
really,
my reason for it being on B is because of actually, it's more of a personal reason, as of how I love this weapon. I've used it one generation after another, picking up like just unsheath and then straight into just slap is fun and all, but one thing about this weapon is that throws me off like entirely is like per se prioritizing to True Charge Slash and all the others. It did bug me in a way for just being the only prioritizing thing. And okay, I can skip into True Charge Slash, but a lot of people don't treat this weapon the way they want to. They prioritize how True Charge Slash is. When I used this weapon in GU, there were two sets of slashes that I had. Three. There was a special sheathing powerhouse giver. There was the Brimstone Slash, which was also True Charge Slash times 11.
Oh yeah, I remember watching that Brimstone. Brimstone was badass. If I ever, what's it called? Get Rise, and I get the Greatsword. If they have that in the game, I'm going to be using that. That's just so cool.
You have super armor once you're charging up that attack for a devastating hit. And then there was one where, it's kind of like the Charge Slash in the air, but there was kind of like Moonbreaker, which was a cutting slash where you swing the sword with that heavy mobility, and then you throw the sword, and the sword carries you for you to do yet another slash. that had a lot of cutting value. That was the sickest thing. That's one of the things that I kind of do miss about this weapon. And like I said, this is a personal thing. And it's kind of like to just, find the ledges, to just go into, like, weapon slopes was A-okay and all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think that, trying to do, the whole prioritizing true charge slash was definitely, it was interesting, but it kind of took the greatsword in the wrong direction, because, I mean, there definitely are a lot more attacks, and it's, true charge definitely is your most powerful, and getting a shortcut to it would probably be helpful during certain openings, where monsters are only down for a short period.
If anything, I would give it A, if anything, at best. But again, I wanted to feel like I wanted to continuously big brain the true charge slashes every time, which I did. Baiting Lunastra into a true charge slash without having her fall down was actually the greatest thing I've ever done. And, sliding down to do the Belial's Edge slash was even good, but not many people use that. The slide charge.
Yeah.
They really just did something else. I haven't played with a lot of greatsword players.
Honestly, it's all about like the true charge or
it's the shoulder
quick draw.
Yeah, quick draw, shoulder bash, and true charge. That's the only thing I've seen from players. I don't see them use the weapon. Like, you can use a side slap.
Yeah, you have it generally has two styles of play in WoW, which is, go for true charge, or you just, crit draw where you attack, you sheath, rinse, repeat, with Frostcraft, because it's really good with Frostcraft. And all that,
Frostcraft brings back the old style greatsword, which was the viable one, which I don't mind that.
But yeah, I don't mind that either. It's sometimes, one of the more, it's easier to do it, and it's still just as effective at doing damage. I just wish, there's a little bit more variety to it. Like, I personally use it like the way it was intended to, and I still have tons of fun with the thing. Like, I don't always go for true charges, because I realize that, hey, not every attack has, like, an opening for true charge. And, even the first two levels, if you're able to charge them up, quick enough, they still do decent amount of damage. And one thing people probably would never think of doing, that I probably do with it, is sometimes when I'm going into a true charge, I don't max charge it. Sometimes I have to just go for a simple one, just tap it just to get into the true charge, just so I could pull it off.
I've seen a lot of people prioritize the fully charged than the regular one itself, and
because you want the big hit, right? And it's so satisfying to land. But sometimes there's just no time, and it doesn't allow for it.
Now, but at the exact same time, and this is one thing I've had an issue with World in general, why does there have to be a massive long time to have hit lag on greatsword? When you do a devastating attack, this isn't a fighting game to be doing hit lag on this specific game, but there were times where I did hit true charge slash, and I think now I see why I put it on B, where my character paused in the animation for a good couple seconds, only for a side monster to just spank me out of it. Yeah, I landed that hit, but I suffered punishment from it. Are you
talking about like the recovery time?
Not the recovery. No, once you land a hit, your character's on a pause. That's hit lag.
I know what you mean. When you what you call it? It's supposed to, I guess they're trying to make it more cinematic, specifically for that specific move, because hey, this is the hardest hitting melee move that you can ever do.
It reminded me of like when I'm hitting down aerial with Ganondorf on Smash, or like any other fighting game I would ever do a heavy hitting move, and it was just like, oh great, can I just do another input after this? No, it just like it keeps you there. And there's a value in the world where if for specific weapons you can actually modify the hit lag time, and it was ridiculous. The game soft locks itself if you do that. And it was really funny because hitting True Charge Slash with multiple times the hit lag was very hilarious in its own right, because you couldn't move, you couldn't do anything, you couldn't pause, you couldn't do just jack shit. And like, I don't think hit lag was ever needed in a Monster Hunter game. It was never there, or it was legitimately the first game to ever have this type of hit lag. And Rise does have some weapons with a little bit of hit lag, but it's kind of like hardly noticeable, where in World, for most weapons, it is there.
And I do think, I do agree with you. Like, it does apply on most of the harder hitting attacks that you do in this game, where it does kind of highlight the fact that you're using a strong attack, and it's just like, here, you're about to do a crazy powerful move, so let's give the moment you hit it, just make it kind of cinematic, so that it kind of pauses for effect.
If that was the case, at least give me some invulnerability where I can actually not get punished for doing so.
Yeah, I wish it had a little bit of hyper armor when you did that as well.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, you want to enjoy that feeling. That's what it's meant for, right?
Yeah.
So,
and just having it there just ruins it, because you were still getting punished for succeeding on something good. So, that's why I felt like I should put this in B.
I see.
Yeah, now I just remember why I put it in B. Now.
Okay. So, I totally get where you're coming from with it. I just, I feel like just not even just the greatsword is almost larger than itself. You know what I'm saying? No pun intended. All right.
Yeah, like once the unique weapons come back to Rise, there's going to be a greatsword bigger than any other greatsword that anyone has ever had before, and it's wholehearted fun to have these unique weapons. Like the bone slap-ons, like, dude, when I found out that Glavenus' greatsword was not going to make it, I felt like dropping the weapon entirely, because Glavenus' greatsword is legitimately a good-looking greatsword.
When I realized that's what the style of the greatsword that you get when you cut his tail and whatnot, I was just like, I am so disappointed. Why did they do this? Like,
let alone Zenogre's greatsword as well was never added. So I started to dislike World a lot more because of these development decision choices that really is just slowly ruining the game, for me at least. And that's why I started to just slowly hate World for that specific reason.
Yeah. Can we all agree? Let's all agree that having just a bare base skin and then slapping a few extra little features on the side of it and calling that a unique weapon is absolute bullshit.
Yeah, it was.
It was us. The amount of times I've been disappointed with that, especially with greatsword.
And that's why they added the layered weapon system, because they knew people were going to hate this stuff. The community screamed that they wanted a layered weapon system because nobody wanted this. It was just like, it was bad. It gave the sense of reward an empty husk of it. It was just like,
I just saw this massive monster with a sword for a tail, and I cut it off. Wow, I'm gonna get this badass weapon. I'm gonna have this tail for a sword, and it's gonna be so cool. And then you go in and you look at where it is. All right, there's the weaponry. Let's see, what does it look like?
Why did it? And it also pisses me off because it also is kind of like for Brachydios, he gets a bone slapped on weapon, but his raging, he gets his original design.
Yeah,
what?
That at the very least, it wasn't a it was a reskin. I was thankful for that. I was actually expecting it, the same as the Brachy, just with more glowing slime, and so I was very grateful for that, and I know a
Yeah.
lot of people were grateful for that.
Now, next weapon on the list.
Dual blade. My favorite person, and now I'm I'm not just gonna place this in S tier and be like, oh yeah, this is my favorite, it's the best, because it isn't. It's I'm able to take a step back and really just kind of think about these weapons in general. And honestly, if I were to place it, I'd probably place it either in A or B tier. Like A tier just because of the sheer amount of damage you can do and how easily you can do it. Because for one, I mean, dual blades are it's the most mobile weapon in the game, besides the insect glaive and its ability to vault. Like you're able to just kind of, dash, Beyblade everywhere and whatnot. It has the lowest commitment besides sword and shield for attacks, so you're able to just kind of attack and then weave and bob, and that's honestly what I love about the weapon. It's why I main it. It's because it's super dynamic. It's the most dynamic weapon actually out there because of it. And so, it makes me feel like a badass whenever I'm going through and I'm just bobbing and weaving through attacks while, going in and slashing the monster with my own. So yeah, it's the fact that it's a purely elemental weapon, which is, the first purely elemental weapon we've come up with on this list. So the fact that you have to farm, 5 different weapons for each element, compared to a lot of other weapons, which generally, you only need one, one good solid weapon type, which is generally your raw weapon, and you'd be fine for the most part. And so that's one thing that I did realize, about this weapon that kind of turned me off from it, because I was kind of like that. I was like, why can't I just have dual blades that I like? And I still to this day have use the quote unquote raw dual blades, aka the Fatalis Dual Skies. And even before then, I used the Safi Shatter Claws, just because I just kind of wanted to go and smack monsters. I didn't want to care too much about elements, despite it being elemental.
Yeah,
even if
and that's
it use. So
yeah, and that kind of in itself is what I don't think there was really much wrong with this weapon. Especially, back in base world, this weapon did fall behind because nobody really DPS was like a thing, and nobody wanted to use it because it was a weak wielding weapon. I personally still used it because when you're in demon mode, you can still do pretty much a lot of stuff in preserve. Then you have iframes on dodge, which people did not pay attention to that. Some did,
yeah.
But most who think about DPS, they didn't. For an elemental damage weapon, I do feel like World have given it a lot more unique weapon types, because I don't know if anyone noticed where if you do get the gold and silver dual blades, you have poison and fire. Kushala and Teostra's, you have ice and blast.
Which it's an interesting concept, but then I learned that because it's split, it's actually one weapon / status ailment per sword, and so it's effectively half what the values actually say. Yeah. So you're not actually doing as much of each different type of status or element that you normally think you would be doing. It's actually half of either.
And let's not forget about the also the event ones that does paralysis and sleep, which those were fun to use. I wish they could have just gave it more of a use instead of just giving it straight blue sharpness. I mean, a little bit of white and a little bit of damage instead of the augmentations. But those types, like back in GU, there was Fairy Tail dual blades with the insignia on it. which had, blast and fire. There was the Baki combat jutsus, which was a raw dual blades where had you fighting as your own hands. I'm pretty sure you've seen the Nergigante dual blades, right? Where it's just straight claws.
They're basically just claws.
Yeah, they had the Magala dual blades that were just claws themselves as well. They had Strider's dual blades, which was basically his weapon from Strider Hear You. It was kind of like dual blades should have gotten more love this game in terms of weapon design, because I was just not a fan of Bracky's dual blades.
Yeah, honestly, my favorite ones, and I still skin every weapon I still have. I still skin to Sappy. I like the curve and I like the glow. The curve emphasizes how much you're spinning and the type of attacks that you do, which involve, moving your body in a circular, motion, the circular types of attacks that you do. And so it just kind of expands upon that, and it makes you feel, more like a Beyblade than more. And the glow, helps you kind of identify a little bit easier what kind of element you're using or status if you're using that. So
yeah, and funny enough, I personally would just put this weapon in A, because of the simple fact that, a lot of people think they know the weapon, but they don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how to do the claw weapon, where you just lunge up and you have the claw, and then you just claw into the monster, and then just actually do the tenderization just once or twice.
That is definitely something that most people do not know how to do. And if they do, they don't do it effectively. Legit. I do consider myself an actual true master of the dual blades. I am able to actually use that and the tenderizing effect to its max potential and whatnot. And the amount of times I see other dual blade users use that is extremely small. As in, I've met, I can actually count on one hand how many people have done that. Consistently.
I only managed to do it 6 times in my lifespan, trying to figure out how I can use this effectively, let alone the adept dodging slinger burst, which I really felt very upset at that part, because I did not want to have my adept dodge locked behind a slinger burst, because at that point, mainly my mentality for every hunter's mentality in Iceborne is to wall the monster, whereas of me, when I was hunting with the group, helping a friend out, they said, you haven't walled the monster once, what are you doing? When I was trying to preserve it to have the adept evade slinger burst. And at that point I just felt like, dude, I could just run temporal mantle then, if that's the case. I gave up at some point using the weapon because of that one little setup, because in previous gens you could always just adept evade while jumping into the monster's attacks, or then there's aerial style, where you can just jump into the monster in midair, do a flurry of attacks with dual blades, and then come back down and just tear apart. And Generations Ultimate's dual blades kind of just goes a long way of how extremely good it is and how well versed it is. And World's dual blades have that complexity as well. It's just it doesn't fly by for a good term of it doesn't fly by as a good term of where you can just play the weapon and think you're already a boss at it because you know a few things. And a lot of people were claiming to that, Reddit, and they got to the point where they were a little bit excessively toxic, seeing other people out DPS them with the dual blades because they're using it a little bit different. But that's a personal hell for me. And it's kind of I still use the weapon. It's just I start to sleep on it a little bit more because I didn't want to invest on wholehearted element half the time, and I just took Raging Bracky's dual blades because I'm very used to.
Same as me, huh?
I'm very used to raw dual blades back in the old gen, where I didn't have to worry about that so much. I really didn't.
But yeah, on the DPS aspect, it is. I mean, compared to other weapons, being able to actually do good DPS with this thing, it is not very hard. It's very easily accessible to most players, and I'd actually consider it one of the beginner friendly kind of weapons, just because, like I mentioned, it is low animation, low commitment type weapons with its animations very short and sweet. The only thing you have to worry about is your demon dance, which is actually a 3-second long thing. And
Yeah, so going in and out of demon mode just to charge your demon it's just that in itself. If you know how to manage your stamina, you have no problem keeping it, because once you get into demon mode and you're out of it, all you got to do is just press like one button to do the rounds, the round slash for approach, and then you're just in the monster's face constantly.
I call it the Beyblade attack.
Yeah.
Because that's all you do. You're spinning in a big circle and just slash, 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 slash.
Yeah. So it's kind of like...
You go in your Beyblade, back and forth, and you do, like, your little Arc Demon dance, which I was surprised that Arc Demon mode didn't really do much of anything, except make those 2 moves accessible outside of Demon mode, which was the Beyblade spinning attack and the what I affectionately refer to as the mini dance. It's called the Demon Flurry, and I know the Beyblade move is called the Demon Flurry Rush, and that's why I call it those moves, because it can be a little confusing. So, but yeah, Arc Demon only gives you that, those 2 moves outside of Demon mode, which I was really disappointed in, personally. Because I saw how Arc Demon mode actually changed your moveset in the previous game, and so I was like, when it came to World, I was actually a little disappointed in that. And so seeing the stuff that's going to happen with Rise, I feel like, I'm more excited to see some of the changes that's going to happen with that, and being able to do the bell, as well as being more aerial in general, because that is definitely a weakness of Dual Blades is aerial monsters. God, I do not like fighting flying monsters with that weapon.
Fairly, from the demo, from what I've seen, you have the Adept Evade back for Dual Blades, and let alone there is also the one where you silk into the into the monster, and you just like do mounting damage with grounded damage at the exact same time with the silk tied up until it runs out. But that's one that I'm gonna trade in. And there's another switch silk bind where it just lunges you up in the air. Basically, it just puts you up in the air. But you can already tell why it puts you up in the air, because you can do the demon mode into Beyblade into the monster from what the trailer showed. So it's kind of like, I can understand that. That's like a bit of a good instance, because it's kind of like monsters do AoE. A lot of AoE attacks in that game, so you want to just get up in the air and just be safe with Dual Blades, where I thought Dual Blades did not have that in the demo, where they were just the sheath and get up in the air. But no, there was silk bind for that, which is good. So with the weapon and sheath, you can actually give the weapon its aerial versatility and its ground versatility both at the exact same time. So the weapon has its little cutesy taste to it that makes things a lot better. I wonder if they'll ever give out a silk bind that gives into, I think it was Wolf Small style. And Wolf Small style thing, is kind of like, your character gets enraged and they're constantly doing more hits, like more stun hits with Dual Blades than they were to ever do. And that was a thing in GU where your character goes into a frenzied demon state where they're not in demon mode, but if you do demon mode in that state, you're dealing nothing but multiplied hits each time, to the point where you're running through your sharpness as quick as possible. So I hope to see that. If they do have it in Rise, I'll be happy to see that. But if they don't, I don't care, because it's kind of like giving Dual Blades an access to the air with a wire bug, and then just like doing whatever as a weapon is like given to you. It's fun to just be balanced of both ground and air. Airtight.
Being limited to the ground is definitely, I've felt that like quite often, especially when I was first learning Dual Blades. Just barely getting to the game, and I was fighting flying monsters, and I didn't always have flash bugs, and I was just like,
The only time I had like time to even think of being remotely in the air is the vines or the crevice of the walls, like Sword and Shield, where you can just press two buttons and your character automatically runs up, and then they'll just like push themselves back. World was a more you need the environment to hunt better type of game, but it was executed in such a way that I can't even. It makes Rise makes World seem like, bruh, if you want to use the environment, just use the endemic life to your advantage type, and yet you can walk on walls freely. So it's kind of like, bruh, I'm you but better.
Yeah, I do think that they're doing using their environment to advantage a little bit, better than what they did. And that's not to say that World did it really bad at all. Like, they actually, like, with the amount of things that you can do, like dropping falling rocks on monsters, knocking over trees to trap something in vines, putting someone into one of those little watery bubbles in the Coral Highlands, dropping a tooth from the Rotten Vale, and the different things that you could do, taking advantage of gusts of wind in the Hoarfrost Reach or the Core Highlands way up high, to kind of get some air with the glider mantle.
Yeah, doing all that had its taste, but it's kind of like it was rare half the time, because it's kind of like a lot of players did not prioritize that at best, unless you are someone who is, well versed, and it's hard to play with people who are well versed unless you just do it yourself, and
especially
that's
when
pretty much that.
Most of the like, you would think that there's a lot of walls that you can run up, right, that you can use to hop off. Well, and I mean, in World, there isn't quite as many. Like, they have to be very specific walls. Like, when I saw it for the first time, I tried imitating it, and I thought it was really cool. But then I was like, okay, let me do it against this wall. Wait, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Does it have to be a big wall?
Yeah,
and when I learned that, I was so disappointed.
Climbable or roundable wall that has you rebound off without even you clinging to it a good percentage of the time.
That was definitely very disappointing. So
I felt like that's kind of like what they were. Yeah, I felt like when they were just doing that, they wanted you to like pick your opportunities when the game or the hunt decides that, and it's kind of like you breaking your own opportunities was good, but the game and the monster locale deciding whether you pick your opportunity and how you do it, it was just like, it wasn't bad. It's just it wasn't my cup of tea, to be honest.
Yeah. I agree with you as well. Being able to use your environment like that is, in my opinion, part of truly, becoming a master hunter.
Yeah.
And so not being able to, use the environment as much as possible is kind of a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, preparation towards that gives the livelihood of the game. And
anyways,
now to my hot swap of my king, the weapon that I've given so much love since.
By the way, did Chargeblade and Dual Blades come out at the same time?
Chargeblade and what?
Dual Blades. Did they come, like, when they were first introduced to the Monster Hunter series? Did they come out at the same time, or was it like two different games?
No, it was Chargeblade and Encyclave, and I think Switch X. No, it was Encyclave and Chargeblade. I think, yeah, they came out in full Ultimate, but okay. I couldn't really tell.
Because I know that Sword and Shield, like Dual Blades, was kind of like an off branch of Sword and Shield in one of the early games, and so it didn't become its own actual, its own weapon, until later. But anyways, so Chargeblade, this very versatile weapon. In my opinion, it is the most versatile weapon of all the melee weapons, and I really had fun with it.
Yeah, it is by far one of the most fair, balanced, and honest weapons in all of Monster Hunter I could ever think of. From
I would
4 to Rise, it is still a fairly balanced and honest weapon.
Yeah, it was kind of shocking because going from dual blades, one of the simplest and easiest weapons to get into, straight into Chargeblade, which is one of the mechanically most complex weapons to use. Like, I remember getting hit by that, and it was such a shock to the system to see something like this. And it's just like, wait, how does this work? I mean, it's like someone who's all their life learned how to use an automatic vehicle, and they go to a manual vehicle, and you're just like, wait a second, you're supposed to get the clutch, and then you move this thing, and then you give gas, right? And it's just like, okay, this kind of changes things, but in a similar way to kind of how manual, versus automatics, manual will generally give you a little bit more control over the vehicle. It's similar to the to the Chargeblade. That analogy, in that having despite the complexity, you have so much available to you that you can do with this weapon, and the amount of combos you can do with this thing is actually insane. Like,
Now,
I
like,
don't know.
yeah, it's fairly balanced. Now, I'm gonna put this in A tier. Normally, a lot of people would probably put it in B or C, and it's because of the learning curve.
Yeah, I would put this in A tier, and it's like I said, just solely because of the learning curve. If it didn't have quite as hard of a learning curve, this would easily be S tier, very easily,
Yeah.
based on the amount of stuff you can do with it. Because even when I was had become a more seasoned hunter, like, I was still learning about all the things you could do with Chargeblade. Like, at first I learned the basics of charging your files and getting that into your shield, and then attacking, spamming the big super move that you can do, the super element discharge. And I was that was really satisfying to land, and I thought that's kind of all there was to it. And as far as I know, in base world, that's all there was to it for the most part. And I just thought, it seemed to be lacking something, and I realized that a lot of it, it was basically lacking more so in the axe form. And Iceborne fixed that when it came up with Savage Axe form, which really, gave it even more versatility, because Savage Axe made elemental Chargeblade a lot more viable. And whatnot. Yeah. It's just like it actually, despite being a raw focus weapon at first, like, using element is equally as viable as using it for raw with impact files. So you can, it doesn't even matter what you want to choose. You're still going to, do, effectively, similar amounts of damage and whatnot with it. Just different files, to achieve the same thing. And I truly love Savage Axe mode. It seemed awesome. I didn't like how much it eats your sharpness. Oh my god, it eats your sharpness so fast. But it's still so satisfying to get in and just dig into the monster and hear all those kicks as it just slides through. It's so satisfying.
Oh yeah. And the crazy part about it is, kind of like in previous games, not only that before Savage Axe became Savage Axe, the axe form had like a hunter art called Ripper Shield, which not only it just like tore through the monster with cutting damage. You're also an active guard point, making it easier for you to actually just like not get punished per se. And that in itself, with the SAD and N amped elemental discharge, it's kind of like base world, red shield, was basically a go-to thing to actually kill a monster when Team Darkseid did it. They literally just sit there, let a Diablos attack them for I don't know how long, and the Diablos died just by them guarding, because Red Shield does impact damage as well. So it's kind of like, you have cutting damage, you have KO damage, you have regular damage, you have all this in one weapon. What is there not to like? You have big damage, you have multi damage, you have everything. It has a learning curve when it comes to guard points, and that's what scares people away, is because people don't want to position into that. They want to go into big poppy damage. They want to get into big boy damage. They want to go...
They try to treat it like a greatsword, when it's actually supposed to be more like a sword and shield.
Yeah.
It's like the sword and shield's bigger brother. You know?
And that's what people, they truly want from this game, from this, weapon, is just they want to keep it basic. Attack monster, charge up stuff. Then
you have a lot of offense, a lot of defense with your shield. It's not quite as big as a lance, but it's not like small like a sword and shield is. It's so you actually have and you can charge your shield so that you have even more defense levels, and reduces your chip damage and knockback, and in the guard point, just on top of that, being able to literally have a counter system, that's also pretty awesome.
You technically
being able to
have
counter
all these things, and it's kind of being
countering into your ultimate move is so good.
Then
just the smaller one,
and then you can charge your sword. You can you literally have the whole kit of every weapon put into one, at least at best. Now, the reason why it does fall into A tier is just the learning curve. There are 10 levels of Chargeblade, and it is beyond the most excruciating. Dude, I would say it took me a whole year to learn my own weapon.
Hey, no, I am with you there. Like I said, this was the second weapon I learned, and it was such a shock going from dual blades to one of the easiest in the game to just pick up and go at, to this weapon, which can do basically everything, but had so much you had to learn to really understand fully. And even now, I could even tell you right now, one of the things I learned that helped me optimize my damage was when I go into Savage Axe mode and one of monsters down, and I do the the spinning attacks and all that for the elemental discharge. Instead of just keep on spinning even when the monster's getting up, after a few hits, I'll just do not the big elemental discharge, but just the regular one, and I do that, and it does a lot of damage right there.
Yeah,
it's smaller windows, smaller attack, less less recovery. So I'm less vulnerable, but I still get off a decent chunk of damage when I do that. It's really satisfying. And I feel like a badass when I do that.
And that in itself, it's kind of like when you're doing SAD, lunging a heavy-ass shield tied to your sword, giving it... I'm surprised that the hunters haven't broken their arms or wrists or shoulders doing that, because doing that takes a massive amount of inhumane strength, and to just have it still spinning and then just slamming into a monster's skull, dude, that is just dude, that is just too much. SAD looks very flashy, and when Rise's version of the bounce SAD happened, I was just like, bruh.
Yes,
it's kind of like this weapon is just stylish in its own right. And you know what's funny? Because when Master Rank Kolv came out, I dropped this weapon only because I knew that Kolv's Ice and Safi's armor was a combination for Diablos' full-on death. I never abused a Diablos or Kushala as bad as I did.
And I remember Diablo's it's one of the perfect monsters to learn guard points with. when some people come to me is like, hey, you know how to use Chargeblade? And I'm like, yeah. And I tell them, what are your best abilities, and easiest way to really get into truly learning how to use Chargeblade effectively is learn guard point. And a monster to do that is Diablos, and they'd all like cringe and cower a little bit. It's like, are you sure? It's like, yeah, he charges into you. You instantly, press, your, certain buttons, and you'll guard point. It's the moment they attack you, and when they start learning, they're like, oh yeah, and then you can see the, they're starting to get into it, and they feel that satisfaction. Hey, I learned how to guard point with this thing. I feel so cool, and it's
one thing
something about guard points that makes you feel really satisfied, especially since you can chain that into a what you call either charge your shield, or you could use your super attack, or you could go into Savage Axe mode, and just there's so much things you could do with it.
Yeah, like this weapon was like I was still playing GU when Base World came out, and this weapon was like the last thing on my mind for a good number of reasons. And suddenly, after seeing some guy kill Diablos with one of the Kajar weapons, in like 4 minutes with just SAED and block strings, I was just like, I need to try out this weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I've never dropped this weapon ever. I only dropped it because it became one of the weapons I got serious with a monster. Where if I got mad at a monster, I touched this weapon, the monster's not getting up. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's how I, same way I felt with dual blades, but this is also a nice, close second where it's just like, if I feel like I'm struggling possibly with the monster, picking up a charge blade, I feel like, I can accomplish more, especially, because, unlike dual blades, it has reach. You can hit monsters in the air with it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like AED and SAEDs are options where you literally can counteract a good number of monsters. My biggest challenge was a tempered Rajang for this weapon because of the simple fact that it moved nothing but just asinine a lot. And I had so much fun with that.
Yeah, whatchamacallit? Actually, I remember, when first fighting Rajang with the dude, he was so difficult because I couldn't quite land him. I felt like I was stuck in sword and shield mode trying to do damage. And even then, like, especially when Furious Rajang came out, kind of expanded on that a little bit, but
he became a disappointment compared to original. Alright, so last but not least, the bow. Was top tier in world, fell slightly half and half in Iceborne.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say about bow? I'd have to say bow is probably, God, I mean, heavy bowgun was the third weapon I ever got into, and so I can't, especially since when I made my ranged character, I specifically started with it, and bow was the last thing I learned how to use. It's the last weapon I wanted to save bow so that I always had something to come back to for Monster Hunter, because I didn't want to completely burn myself out because I love the game so much. And I love the bow. Legit. I do think it is kind of a lot like ranged dual blades with its style. It's it's very mobile, and it has same mechanics where it's stamina management and all that. It's just one, you have your stamina constantly draining, versus the other where it's just like, in order to do
your most effective damage, you want to be dashing around, keeping your level as high as possible, while at the same time attacking the monster and avoiding their attacks at the same time.
Honestly, this was one of those weapons where Mega Dash Juice was supposed to be present in World.
Yeah. Honestly, having Mega Dash Juice for dual blades and bow would have honestly been
It would have
so
saved
awesome.
these weapons in terms of utility because they required nothing but straight movement. And
Yeah.
I got into this bow when I was speed running Savage Devil Joe in an arena quest, actually. Because it was the only weapon we could have used to avoid getting one-tapped by him.
Oh, yeah. Oh, was it the, what you call it, that one,
Tempered Savage Devil Joe.
Yes, I did that recently, and I don't know what my time was. I did fairly well, but
I had 5 minutes and 34 seconds, if I remember on that. Because I had someone with me, and then by myself I went around about 7 and 40 seconds, almost close to 8 minutes with that. And honestly, it was kind of like, I was alright, but then trying to build for the bow was actually one of the most grueling thing ever. Like,
yeah,
in World Iceborne, I love this weapon, but this weapon really, again, I refused, and this was like a my problem thing, I refused to adapt to having to have multiple elemental sets for this weapon, especially when I wanted to use a little bit of raw for it, and I wasn't doing nothing but pickle damage, like sliced pickle damage with that, and I went ahead and borrowed a set from somebody and used that instead. But against Elder Dragons, I could not use this weapon at all because of their auras was up. So it was just I wanted to use this weapon a little bit more, but then I couldn't. Base World, this weapon did excel on one of the most used weapons from what I've seen. But then Iceborne came out and this weapon just died. Until Dragon Piercer came up.
Oh yeah, Dragon Piercer. Yeah, that's another thing I'd like to touch upon. But I have to say, like, one of my personal gripes with this was, I mean, on top of being an elemental weapon, which like I said before with dual blades, I mean, I'm generally, it wasn't a big fan of, but I went ahead and did try to get all the individual elemental bows for max effectiveness, just because it's a ranged weapon and all that. So, but I have to say, it's one of the most, if not the most, deco reliant weapon out there in order to unlock its full potential, because you need to have 3 of, at least in base game, you needed 3 of the rarest decos in order to truly make this thing shine. And that was normal shot, spread shot, and mighty bow. And the fact that there was a specific deco that actually directly boosted its power by giving it another charge level was really annoying, in my opinion. Why can't they just have that naturally?
Yeah, honestly, to build that up, I was never getting those. At some point in the game, they gave it to you, but it's kind of like, for most people, not everybody could get that, so there was no point in getting into the weapon.
Yeah, I was lucky. I was so lucky that just before I tried this weapon, I happened to get that, like, one deco, that one mighty bow deco, just before I wanted to try this. So I was very fortunate on that hand. So I was able to actually use it the way, and actually take full advantage of its full potential with all the charge levels that you for each shot. So I truly feel bad for all the people who really did like this bow but couldn't use it as effectively, because you actually needed those super rare decos to make it work. It's actually infuriating.
Yeah,
how that's supposed to be like that. It's so.
I have to put this along with T tier, because it's kind of like, yeah, this weapon, and don't get me wrong, the Dragon Piercer method thing does work, but that was kind of like, that's a
Yeah,
fuck
that's
around
also a
set.
meme. That's
Yeah,
that's. I also thought that it was the Dragon Piercer seems so cool. You know, you charge up this shot. You know, it takes a little while, but when you release it, it's going to do a lot of piercing damage. But the thing is, not a lot of monsters have good hit zones for that, and the damage itself is really mediocre. And even when you spec into it, you need to have not just like the special ammo boost and piercing shots, but you also have to have you also have to have Mighty Bow, and you also have to have Frostcraft to make that work. And
yeah,
that's just even another kick in the dick.
yeah,
That
and let
makes me
alone with
like,
the Arc Tempered Volcana to fill that, get those missing gaps as well. It's that,
God,
you can't do it because a lot of people are not going to take that monster lightly. That monster hurts if you mess around.
So this weapon has top tier damage potential, up there with heavy bowgun, with some of the fastest clears out there. But it's also, it also has a fairly high learning curve, because for one, it's a ranged weapon. If you get hit, that's most of your HP gone. And there's also stamina management on top of having to get multiple elements, on top of having to get the decos necessary for it to get as much as you can out of this weapon. So it's like, it's fun in like just being able to go around and just attack the monster just without even having to worry about all that. Just the gameplay itself is very fun. Very fun. I'd put this up there, kind of with Dual Blades and Insect Glaive for how dynamic it can be when you're out there, attacking the monster and just weaving around each attack that it tries to do. But the fact that you're so limited at the same time is what's holding me back from really putting it up there. And so
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it in the D tier because, in my opinion, I think because of how dynamic it is and how powerful it can be in general, like it's not quite it's not quite down there, but I wouldn't put it up in the S or even the A tier. Like, this is something that would, in my opinion, go into the B or C tier, a B at best, and that's only because that's specifically for the fun part. C mostly because of, and I think I'll put that actually in C tier, and that's specifically because of how much you need to do in order to really make this weapon shine. More so than any other weapon on this list. You need more decos to actually make this weapon effective. And not only just any type of decos, like you would like with Greatsword, where you need the charge decos and whatnot. And you might
let
need
alone the
artillery for
attempt
some of
of
the other.
mounting with it as well, which that I have a clip where I'm actually just beaming at it with Savage, and then suddenly it's kind of like I'm going to the dodge and I'm already mounting it. Like, if you can pull that off, that's like the most savage thing you could ever do with the weapon, but at the exact same time that takes its time. Like,
also, it has a really weird melee attack. I'm not sure why. I don't know. After you do a dash attack, or like you do a dash to dodge like a sidestep, and then you press your melee button and you go up and just stab an arrow into the ground. I don't know what that's all about.
honestly,
I really don't. I never figured that out.
In Rise, Dragon Piercer gets a massive buff, and Bow is considered now a support weapon, but it's more easier to get into.
I hope so. I hope that they don't limit it quite as much as they did in World. It truly was frustrating realizing, this seemed like such a fun and simple weapon. It's a bow and arrow, right? You just need a bow, some arrows, some coatings for your arrows, obviously, and you should be able to, just kind of go in, attack the monster, and do well, right? No, it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, no, to build that up, it was just annoying, and because of Rise refurbishing that, a lot of people don't really feel like they need to put that much effort into Bow.
So, So you only have longsword in your S tier, huh?
Yeah. I would be biased and just put Chargeblade there, but no, I'm just gonna keep it honest and fair for an A tier.
No, I agree with you. I was just, like I said, I was the same with dual blades. I wanted to put that in S tier just because it's so fun and dynamic and does lots of loads of damage, even if you're a noob and all that. But there is some element of some downsides to it and all that. So
yeah. As for longsword, I can't even count the downsides when Rise just made it beyond the most easiest weapon in the game to pick up.
Oh yeah, it has so many counters now. It has counters upon counters upon counters. It's like, oh, you count as like you were trying to approach me, that kind of thing, and then you count. It's like they attack you, you counterattack, and hell, even if the monster has a counterattack, it's like I have a counterattack for your counterattack.
Yeah, it's kind of like nobody's touching you with this weapon, and it's gonna like the go-to weapon. But I feel like somewhere around the line they might nerf it for the sake of a massive player base using it.
Well, I'm not sure about that, just because for one, the longsword is by far and away just the most popular weapon, and that's probably why they buffed it so much and they gave it so much love. So that people who the good portion of the player base who plays it would be able to enjoy it more and all that. So, and the fact that they made all the counters even easier to use,
just
makes it so much more accessible.
Almost every weapon has a counter for Rise. It's kind of like it's safe to say that every weapon is viable in their own right. People can play and play exactly how and what they want, and they don't really have to suffer from criticism and other player opinions. And that's what World suffered the most, is player opinions and hot takes really kind of almost divided the community as a whole because of it. Not entirely, because a lot of people just shut those people off, but at the exact same time, it's kind of like, yeah, it almost did what it did for a number of people that I've been exposed to.
I mean, longsword is also one of the most polarizing weapons because, at least it's according to the general populace and popularity, because on one hand, it's the most popular weapon by a significant margin. And so, but the fact of the matter is, because there's so many people playing it, you also have a lot of people who don't know what they're doing, and the fact that you can so very easily flinch your teammates if they're not running flinch free, and it also simultaneously gave it one of the worst raps in the game. It has, it's seen as, not just a, really flashy cool weapon, but a noob weapon. And, something, whenever you see someone use it, you think, oh, I'm about to be flinched forever, So it is kind of interesting how polarizing the its popularity kind of gave the weapon such a interesting effect over most people. Because on one hand, oh wow, so cool, so flashy, and I feel so good when using this weapon. And some of the best, players, especially like Peppo from Team Darkside, you see him and you think, damn, this is so cool. He is so cool. He's so good with this weapon. He's so good at this game. And then it makes you want to go in and try it yourself, and you realize, damn, I'm not quite as good, but hey, I still feel pretty badass nonetheless.
Yeah.
And then you can hop into a multiplayer hunt, and you can almost feel through your screen the collective eye roll that you get from other players, except for other longsword players. Yeah. It's like if they're not using a longsword, like they are literally rolling their eyes on their screen, and you can just feel that, like, oh god, another longsword user. Is everyone wearing their flinch free?
Yeah, like, honestly, and even then I didn't mind it. I just did the most common sensical thing, which is not be in their vicinity when they're attacking. Which since then, I have all those complaints for longsword has never been. Yeah, it's just never been so visible. So, oh man, this tier list has been one of the most creative things ever. I'm gonna save and download this. Download this anyways. Well, it wants me to log in. That's gay. But yeah, I'm gonna like screenshot this and just like keep it